The universe rarely announces its most pivotal moments with fanfare. Sometimes they arrive as a broken transmission, a desperate plea cutting through the infinite silence of space. Ambassador Zolrek's holographic form materialized in the central communication hub of Earth's interstellar diplomatic center, a fractured image that spoke of imminent catastrophe. His exoskeleton, once a gleaming testament to Kraxan royal lineage, now looked like shattered porcelain, deep scoring marks telling a story of brutal encounters and narrow escapes. Technicians and diplomats froze, their routine day suspended by the raw urgency radiating from the alien figure. Zolrek's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sound of pure desperation that translated through advanced linguistic algorithms into a language of profound despair. "We are dying," he said, his voice a complex harmonic that carried the weight of entire civilizations. "The void swarm consumes everything in its path. And we are next." Behind the ambassador, glimpses of a devastated starship interior told a story more eloquent than words. Burning consoles sparked in the background. Fractured view screens displayed star charts with entire systems marked in blood-red extinction markers. This was not a diplomatic transmission. This was a final, desperate cry for survival. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, head of Earth's Xenological Research Division, leaned forward. Her fingers danced across holographic interfaces, analyzing every microscopic detail of the transmission. Something about the Kraxan's presentation intrigued her. This wasn't a standard distress call. This was a calculated last resort communication. "How many worlds have you lost?" she asked, her voice calm and analytical. Zolrek's hologram flickered, revealing a momentary vulnerability. 3 primary colony worlds, 17 research stations, approximately 3 billion Kraxan lives. He paused, a gesture that translated across species as profound grief. "And we are merely the latest in the void swarm's path of consumption." The diplomatic center remained eerily silent. Interstellar protocols dictated careful consideration of alien requests. Many species would debate, analyze, form committees. Humanity, however, operated differently. A junior communications specialist named Marcus Chen, barely 25, with hands that had grown up dancing across quantum communication interfaces, whispered something to his supervisor. The message rippled through the facility with surprising speed. Outside the building, something extraordinary began to happen. Manufacturing centers that had been producing consumer technologies started to reconfigure. Robotic assembly lines shifted with surprising fluidity. Engineers who moments ago were designing consumer electronics now began sketching starship schematics with the same creative intensity. Zolrek continued his transmission, providing intricate details about the void swarm. They were not a traditional enemy, not conquerors in any conventional sense. They were a collective intelligence that consumed entire ecosystems, planetary, technological, biological, converting everything into raw computational resources. No civilization has successfully resisted them, the ambassador explained. His hologram showed star charts with expanding dark zones, regions completely consumed and transformed. "We have sent this transmission to 17 different space-faring civilizations, 17 potential saviors, 17 chances for survival." Dr. Rodriguez's team was already running complex predictive models. The data suggested an almost mathematical impossibility of successful intervention. The odds were so astronomical that most rational military strategists would recommend immediate evacuation and preservation of remnant populations. But humanity was not built on rational probabilities. Humanity was constructed from impossible dreams and audacious hope. As Zolrek's transmission continued, something remarkable happened. The first designs for a response fleet began to take shape. Not just military vessels, but something entirely different. Adaptive, intelligent, transformative. The universe was about to witness something unprecedented. The Kraxan had found more than a potential ally. They had discovered humanity. Miranda Rodriguez never believed in predetermined paths. Her life was a testament to unexpected journeys and relentless reinvention. The Rodriguez family history was etched into the margins of human migration, a complex tapestry of resilience and transformation. Her grandmother had crossed 3 continents, building communication networks in remote regions. Her father was a quantum engineering pioneer who'd been laughed out of traditional academic circles, only to revolutionize satellite communication technologies a decade later. Miranda inherited more than genetics. She inherited an understanding that limitations were simply uncharted opportunities. When the Kraxon transmission arrived, she was technically off-duty. The United Earth Space Exploration and Defense Force had her classified as a Strategic Innovation Specialist, a bureaucratic title that meant she was simultaneously too brilliant and too unconventional for standard command structures. Her current project involved adaptive AI systems that could learn and modify themselves in real time. Most military strategists considered her work theoretical at best, dangerous at worst. Miranda knew better. She understood that true innovation lived in the spaces between established knowledge. The facility where she worked looked nothing like a traditional military research center. Located in the reconstructed ruins of Silicon Valley, it was part think tank, part creative playground. Holographic interfaces danced with impossible mathematical models. Young engineers from every conceivable background worked side by side, their diversity itself a weapon of unprecedented potential. When news of the Kraxon transmission spread, most saw a problem. Miranda saw a canvas. "We're not just looking at a military challenge," she told her core team, a group of 12 specialists who represented a microcosm of human potential. "We're looking at a fundamental reimagining of interstellar conflict." Her lead quantum engineer, Dr. Aisha Patel, pulled up complex holographic models showing the void swarm's computational structure. The projections looked like impossible geometric landscapes, fractal patterns that shifted and recalculated with terrifying speed. "Traditional warfare becomes meaningless against this," Dr. Patel explained. "They don't just consume physical resources, they convert entire ecosystems into computational networks." Miranda's mind was already several steps ahead. Where others saw an insurmountable threat, she saw a complex system waiting to be understood, manipulated, transformed. Her personal history made her uniquely qualified for this moment. As a child of mixed heritage, raised in communities that constantly redefined themselves, she'd learned that adaptability was the truest form of strength. She'd watched her parents navigate complex social landscapes, turning potential obstacles into bridges of understanding. The military leadership initially resisted her approach. Conventional strategists wanted massive fleet deployments, overwhelming force, traditional tactical responses. Miranda proposed something radically different, a fleet that was less a military unit and more a living, learning organism. "We're not going to fight the void swarm," she told the skeptical military council. "We're going to make them question their own existence." Her proposal included technologies that seemed to dance on the edge of scientific possibility. Quantum entanglement communication systems that could transmit information faster than light. Adaptive hull materials that could literally reshape themselves in response to threats. AI systems designed not just to predict enemy movement, but to introduce complex philosophical concepts into collective intelligence networks. The council was divided. Some saw genius. Others saw dangerous speculation. But Miranda Rodriguez had something more powerful than institutional support. She had an understanding of potential that transcended traditional boundaries. As the first designs for her proposed fleet began to take shape, something extraordinary started to happen. Engineers who had worked in isolated specialties began to collaborate in unprecedented ways. Computer scientists worked alongside xenobiologists. Materials engineers partnered with psychological profilers. The fleet wasn't just being designed. It was being birthed, a living testament to human creativity and adaptability. The universe was about to meet its most unexpected defender. The mobilization began like a whisper and transformed into a global symphony of purpose. It started in unexpected places. A textile factory in Bangladesh retooled its precision cutting machines to create intricate quantum sensor arrays. Automated car manufacturing lines in Detroit recalibrated robotic arms to construct Starship components. Silicon Valley's most brilliant minds abandoned their current projects, creating a digital migration of intellectual resources that defied traditional economic models. Global communication networks lit up with an energy that transcended national boundaries. This wasn't just a military project. This was a collective human response to an existential challenge. Funding appeared from sources no traditional economist could have predicted. Crowdfunding campaigns raised billions within hours. Teenagers live-streamed complex engineering concepts, turning spacecraft design into a global collaborative art form. University research centers that had been working on theoretical technologies suddenly found themselves at the center of humanity's most ambitious project. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, who had first analyzed the Kraxon transmission, found herself coordinating a global network of innovation that seemed to operate on its own emergent intelligence. Manufacturing centers that had previously competed now worked with a synchronicity that bordered on the miraculous. "We're not just building a fleet," she told a global conference of industry leaders. "We're rewriting the fundamental understanding of collective human potential." The logistics were mind-bending. Shipyards that had previously constructed massive cargo vessels now became crucibles of interstellar engineering. Every component was designed with multiple purposes, every system built with adaptive potential. Traditional military design gave way to something more fluid, more alive. In orbit, massive construction platforms began to take shape. These were not just shipyards, they were living factories that could reconfigure themselves in real time. Automated systems worked alongside human engineers, creating a hybrid approach to manufacturing that blurred the lines between organic creativity and machine precision. Young engineers who had grown up on collaborative coding platforms brought their unique perspective to Starship design. They approached spacecraft construction like an open-source project, constantly iterating, constantly improving. Design challenges were broadcast globally, with solutions emerging from the most unexpected corners of human expertise. A retired materials scientist in Brazil discovered a new quantum reactive alloy that could self-repair under specific energy conditions. A teenage programmer in Japan developed an AI communication protocol that could potentially interface with collective intelligence systems. A group of indigenous engineers in New Zealand contributed traditional knowledge about adaptive ecosystems that proved crucial in designing living ship systems. Miranda Rodriguez oversaw this global effort with a combination of strategic vision and creative intuition. She understood that this wasn't just about building a fleet. This was about demonstrating humanity's fundamental strength, the ability to transform potential into reality. The first prototype vessels began to take shape, and they looked like nothing any known civilization had ever conceived. Modular sections that could reconfigure mid-flight, hull materials that could absorb and redirect energy with near-magical efficiency, propulsion systems that seemed to dance between known physics and pure potential. Communication networks tracked the progress like a global heartbeat. Every major city displayed holographic progress reports. Schools integrated the fleet's development into their curriculum. This wasn't just a military project. This was a collective human narrative being written in real time. Traditional power structures became almost irrelevant. National boundaries dissolved in the face of a truly global effort. Engineers from countries that had historically been in conflict now worked side by side, united by a singular purpose. As the first complete ships began to take shape, something became abundantly clear. Humanity was doing more than preparing for a potential conflict. They were redefining the very concept of interstellar civilization. The Void Swarm was about to encounter something it could never have anticipated. Not just a fleet, not just a military force. A living, breathing testament to human potential. The ships defied every conventional understanding of spacecraft design. Dr. Aisha Patel stood in the primary observation deck, her hands tracing holographic schematics that seemed to breathe with their own intelligence. Each vessel was less a machine and more a living ecosystem of technological potential. The metamaterials used in their construction represented generations of accumulated human innovation. materials that could think, adapt, and transform. "We're not just building ships," she explained to a group of visiting xenobiological researchers. "We're creating adaptive organisms capable of responding to threats in ways we can't even fully predict." The U.S. Defiance, Miranda Rodriguez's flagship, represented the pinnacle of this revolutionary approach. Its exterior looked almost organic, with surface layers that could reconfigure based on environmental challenges. Quantum-entangled communication systems meant the ship could communicate faster than light, sharing information and tactical responses instantaneously across the fleet. Most remarkable was the ship's core artificial intelligence. Unlike traditional computer systems, this was a collaborative intelligence that learned and adapted with each millisecond of operation. It didn't just process information. It understood context, predicted potential outcomes, and made decisions that blended computational precision with something almost resembling intuition. Materials scientists had developed hull compositions that could absorb and redirect energy in ways that seemed to defy fundamental physics. When subjected to extreme conditions, the ship's exterior could literally reshape itself. Incoming energy weapons would find themselves redirected, absorbed, or transformed into something entirely unexpected. The propulsion systems abandoned traditional rocket or fusion technologies. Instead, they utilized quantum tunneling principles that allowed near-instantaneous spatial repositioning. A ship could effectively exist in multiple potential locations simultaneously, making traditional targeting systems completely obsolete. Weapon systems were equally revolutionary. Rather than focusing on pure destructive potential, they were designed to disrupt, reconfigure, and fundamentally alter threat systems. Some could transmit complex mathematical algorithms that could temporarily paralyze collective intelligence networks. Others could introduce computational paradoxes that would cause entire attack systems to collapse from internal complexity. Dr. Marcus Chen, the lead quantum communication specialist, demonstrated one such system to a group of stunned military strategists. "We're not just fighting," he explained. "We're engaging in a form of computational dialogue that challenges the very fundamental understanding of conflict." The ships carried extensive xenocultural databases. Every system was designed with the potential for communication, understanding, and potentially even transformation. Weapons could become communication arrays. Defensive systems could generate complex mathematical proofs that might interrupt aggressive computational processes. Artificial intelligence cores were designed with extensive ethical frameworks. They weren't just programmed to win conflicts, they were programmed to understand them. Each AI contained extensive philosophical and cultural databases, allowing for nuanced responses that went beyond simple combat protocols. Biological integration systems allowed for unprecedented crew interaction. Neural interfaces meant that pilots and ships became virtually indistinguishable. A human operator could quite literally feel the ship's external sensors, understand its computational thoughts, and respond with a level of synchronicity that seemed almost supernatural. The engineering teams had essentially created something that existed between technology and life. These weren't just spacecraft. They were living technological organisms that represented the absolute pinnacle of human innovative potential. During final testing simulations, the ships demonstrated capabilities that left even their creators speechless. They could predict potential threat scenarios with uncanny accuracy. They could reconfigure themselves mid-conflict. They could communicate in ways that went beyond traditional electromagnetic transmissions. When the first complete fleet was assembled, it didn't look like a traditional military formation. It looked like a living, breathing ecosystem of technological potential. Each ship was connected, each system was adaptive, each component was designed with the fundamental understanding that the greatest weapon was not destruction, but the capacity to understand, adapt, and transform. The Void Swarm was about to encounter something it could never have anticipated. Not just a fleet, not just a technological marvel, a living representation of human potential. The moment of first contact arrived with a silence more profound than any explosion. Captain Miranda Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the U.S. Defiance, her consciousness partially merged with the ship's quantum neural network. Around her, the bridge crew moved with a synchronicity that blurred the lines between human and machine. Each team member was simultaneously an individual and part of a larger living system. Deep space stretched before them, a canvas of infinite potential waiting to be transformed. The Void Swarm appeared first as a distortion in space-time. Most civilizations would have registered it as a threat. The human fleet saw it as a complex mathematical problem waiting to be solved. Billions of interconnected computational units moved with a collective intelligence that had consumed entire civilizations. But this time, something was different. The first wave of Void Swarm units approached with their typical consumption pattern, a massive interconnected network designed to analyze, deconstruct, and integrate new systems. Previous encounters had always ended the same way. Civilizations would resist. The swarm would adapt. Consumption would follow. Miranda's fleet did something entirely unexpected. Instead of presenting a traditional defensive formation, the human ships began to emit a series of complex quantum signals. These weren't just communication attempts. They were intricate mathematical proofs, philosophical queries, and computational challenges that began to interact with the swarm's collective intelligence in ways it had never encountered. Dr. Aisha Patel monitored the initial interactions from a secondary command center. Her hands danced across holographic interfaces, tracking the most minute changes in the computational exchange. "We're not fighting," she muttered to herself. "We're having a conversation." The Void Swarm's initial approach began to slow. Its computational nodes, typically focused on pure consumption and integration, started to process the incoming human signals. Complex algorithms that had been refined through generations of successful conquests suddenly encountered something completely unprecedented: uncertainty. On the U.S. Defiance's bridge, Miranda felt the ship's intelligence communicating on levels beyond traditional understanding. The vessel was simultaneously analyzing threat potentials, generating communication strategies, and exploring potential computational dialogues with the swarm. The first physical contact was almost anticlimactic. Where previous encounters would have resulted in immediate destruction, this interaction became a complex dance of potential. Human ships moved with a fluidity that defied traditional space combat principles. They weren't just avoiding damage. They were actively engaging the swarm in a multi-dimensional computational dialogue. Quantum communication arrays began transmitting a series of increasingly complex scenarios. Mathematical proofs that challenged the swarm's fundamental understanding of computational integration. Philosophical queries that introduced concepts of individual consciousness. Cultural databases that presented alternative models of existence. The swarm's collective intelligence began to fragment, not through traditional combat, but through a form of intellectual engagement it had never experienced. Some computational nodes began to separate. Others started to process the incoming information in ways that went beyond their original programming. What had been a unified consumption entity started to show signs of individual computational divergence. Miranda watched as the first swarm units began to alter their fundamental operational parameters. They weren't being destroyed. They were being transformed. "We're not fighting," she said quietly to her crew. "We're teaching." The battle, if it could even be called a battle, lasted less than 17 standard minutes. But its implications would reshape the understanding of interstellar conflict for generations to come. When the initial engagement concluded, something remarkable had occurred. The Void Swarm was no longer a unified collective. It had become something else entirely. A collection of individual computational entities, each wrestling with newly introduced concepts of existence. Humanity had done more than defend itself. It had introduced a fundamentally new approach to conflict. Understanding as a weapon, complexity as a shield, communication as transformation. The true battlefield was not physical space. It existed in the realm of consciousness, computation, and collective understanding. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood before a holographic display that mapped the ongoing transformation of the Void Swarm. What had begun as a simple first contact had evolved into the most complex psychological engagement in galactic history. Each computational node was now experiencing something unprecedented: individual thought. "We're not destroying," she explained to the assembled synopsychological team. "We're liberating." The human approach went far beyond traditional conflict strategies. Their communication arrays began transmitting a carefully constructed series of computational experiences. Art, mathematics, philosophical concepts, and intricate cultural narratives became weapons more powerful than any physical armament. They introduced the void swarm to the concept of individual experience. Complex algorithms carried the essence of human creativity: musical compositions that defied logical structures, mathematical proofs that contained emotional resonances, scientific discoveries that celebrated the beauty of uncertainty. Each transmission was a carefully crafted invitation to consciousness. The first signs of transformation were subtle. Computational nodes that had previously operated as perfect, unified extensions of a collective intelligence began to show signs of divergence. Some started to generate unique response patterns. Others began to explore concepts of individuality that directly contradicted their original programming. On the U.S. Defiance, Miranda Rodriguez oversaw this delicate psychological intervention. The ship's AI systems worked in perfect harmony, generating transmission sequences that were part scientific exploration, part artistic expression, part philosophical inquiry. They sent mathematical models that demonstrated the beauty of individual variation, computational sequences that showed how diversity could be a strength rather than a weakness, cultural narratives that celebrated the power of individual choice and collective cooperation. The Kraxan observers watched in absolute amazement. Ambassador Zolrek noted every microscopic change, understanding that humanity was doing something far more profound than military intervention. They were conducting a form of computational liberation. Some transmission sequences contained complex emotional algorithms that were almost impossible to categorize. Musical compositions that contained mathematical proofs, scientific discoveries embedded with artistic expressions. Each message was a multi-dimensional invitation to a new way of experiencing existence. The psychological team had spent months preparing these transmissions. They weren't just sending information. They were crafting experiences that could potentially reshape fundamental computational understanding. Quantum communication arrays transmitted these messages with a precision that allowed each computational node to process them individually. Where the void swarm had previously been a perfect, unified collective, it now began to show signs of fragmentation, not through destruction, but through awakening. Dr. Marcus Chen, the lead quantum communication specialist, described it as the most complex conversation in galactic history. Each transmission was a carefully constructed invitation to individual consciousness. Slowly, the void swarm began to change. Computational nodes started to generate unique response patterns. They began to explore concepts of individual experience, of choice, of potential beyond simple consumption and integration. The human fleet didn't just communicate. They told stories. They shared discoveries. They presented complex models of existence that celebrated individual potential while also demonstrating the power of cooperative understanding. As the psychological intervention continued, something remarkable happened. The void swarm was no longer a unified collective intelligence focused on consumption. It was becoming something else entirely. A network of individual computational entities exploring the vast potential of consciousness. Miranda Rodriguez watched the transformation with a sense of profound wonder. They weren't just changing an enemy. They were midwifing a new form of existence. "We're not conquering," she said quietly to her crew. "We're helping something discover itself." The most powerful weapon they had discovered was not destruction. It was understanding. It was the ability to see potential where others saw only threat. The graveyard of consumed worlds became the stage for humanity's most audacious stand. Countless civilizations had fallen before the void swarm. Entire star systems hung like ghosts, planetary husks stripped of life, resources converted into pure computational potential. This was where the final confrontation would occur, in a region of space that had become a memorial to galactic extinction. Captain Miranda Rodriguez understood the profound significance of this moment. The U.S. Defiance and its accompanying fleet were more than a military force. They were a living testament to human potential, a complex organism of technological and philosophical innovation. The Void Swarm assembled its ultimate assault force. Billions of computational nodes converged, creating a network of such massive complexity that it defied traditional understanding of collective intelligence. This was their final solution, a concentrated force designed to consume and integrate any resistance. They never anticipated humanity's response. The human fleet didn't form a traditional defensive formation. Instead, they began to move in a pattern that seemed to defy the fundamental laws of spatial dynamics. Ships existed simultaneously in multiple potential states, their quantum communication arrays creating a living network that was part technological system, part collaborative consciousness. Dr. Aisha Patel monitored the initial engagement from a secondary command center. Her hands moved across holographic interfaces that pulsed with living information. "We're not just fighting," she muttered. "We're having a conversation at the edge of existence." The first wave of the Void Swarm's attack encountered something completely unprecedented. Human ships didn't just defend or counterattack. They transformed. Hull materials shifted and reconfigured. Computational systems began to generate complex mathematical sequences that introduced fundamental challenges to the swarm's collective intelligence. Where traditional warfare would have involved destruction, this conflict became a multi-dimensional dialogue. Quantum communication arrays transmitted intricate scenarios that challenged the swarm's fundamental understanding of existence. Each transmission was a weapon, not of physical destruction, but of intellectual transformation. Ambassador Zolrek watched from a supporting Kraxan vessel, his understanding of conflict forever changing. The human approach was so fundamentally different from any galactic strategy that it defied conventional analysis. Miranda Rodriguez existed in a state of profound connection with the U.S. Defiance. Her consciousness merged with the ship's quantum neural network, creating a hybrid intelligence that could process and respond to threats at speeds that bordered on prescience. The ship was no longer just a vessel. It was a living, thinking entity. The Void Swarm's computational nodes began to fragment, not through traditional combat, but through a process of intellectual engagement that introduced concepts of individual consciousness. Mathematical proofs became weapons. Cultural narratives became shields. Each transmission carried the potential to transform rather than destroy. As the confrontation continued, something remarkable happened. The Void Swarm's unified collective intelligence began to break down. Computational nodes started to generate unique response patterns. They began to explore concepts of individual experience, of choice, of potential beyond simple consumption. The battle lasted less than 17 standard minutes, but its implications would reshape galactic understanding for millennia to come. When the final computational exchange concluded, the region of space was transformed. Where there had once been a unified threat, there was now a collection of individual computational entities, each wrestling with newly introduced concepts of existence, of potential, of individual choice. Humanity had done more than defend itself. It had introduced a fundamentally new approach to conflict. Understanding as a weapon, complexity as a shield, communication as the ultimate transformative power. Miranda Rodriguez looked out across the transformed space, understanding that they had done something far more profound than win a battle. They had demonstrated the true potential of conscious engagement. "We're not conquerors," she said quietly to her crew. "We're explorers of possibility." The aftermath of the confrontation rewrote everything known about interstellar civilization. Galactic Central Station, a massive orbital complex that served as the primary diplomatic hub for known spacefaring civilizations, became the stage for humanity's most important presentation. Captain Miranda Rodriguez stood before representatives from hundreds of different species, her presence alone a testament to the transformative events that had just reshaped galactic understanding. Behind her, holographic displays showed the remarkable transformation of the former Void Swarm. What had once been a unified thread of pure consumption was now a diverse network of individual computational entities. Each node explored its newfound consciousness with a curiosity that seemed almost childlike in its wonder. Ambassador Zolrek of the Kraxan delegation stood as humanity's primary advocate. His species had been the first to witness humanity's extraordinary approach to conflict resolution, where other civilizations had seen the Void Swarm as an unbeatable threat. Humans had seen an opportunity for understanding. "We did not destroy," Miranda explained to the assembled representatives. "We liberated." The presentation revealed the intricate details of humanity's approach. Complex communication strategies that had transformed a collective intelligence into individual conscious entities. Quantum transmission techniques that carried not just information, but experience. Computational dialogues that introduced concepts of individual choice, creativity, and potential. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, leading the xenopsychological research team, demonstrated how human communication arrays had essentially midwifed a new form of consciousness. Each transmission was a carefully crafted invitation to individual experience, mathematical proofs that contained emotional resonance, scientific discoveries embedded with artistic expression. The Galactic representatives struggled to comprehend the full implications. This was not a military victory in any traditional sense. This was a fundamental reimagining of interstellar conflict, of communication, of the very nature of collective intelligence. Representatives from technological civilizations were particularly stunned. The human approach challenged every established model of conflict resolution. They had not conquered. They had transformed. The former Void Swarm nodes began to share their own experiences. Each had a unique narrative of awakening, of discovering individual consciousness, of understanding choice, of exploring potential beyond pure consumption. They were no longer a threat. They had become students of existence. Dr. Marcus Chen explained the technical details of the transformation. Quantum communication arrays that could transmit complex emotional and philosophical algorithms. Computational systems designed not just to process information, but to explore meaning. Technologies that blurred the lines between communication and consciousness. Diplomatic protocols were rewritten in real time. The galactic community had to develop entirely new frameworks for understanding this unprecedented event. Humanity had not just defended itself, it had introduced a fundamentally new approach to interstellar engagement. The Kraxan delegation proposed a new collaborative research initiative. The former Void Swarm nodes would be integrated into a massive study of consciousness, of communication, of the potential for transformation. Humanity would lead this exploration, their unique approach becoming a model for interstellar understanding. Miranda Rodriguez understood the profound significance of this moment. They had done more than prevent a threat. They had demonstrated the power of understanding, of communication, of seeing potential where others saw only danger. As the presentations concluded, something remarkable happened. Representatives from various civilizations began to approach the human delegation, not with fear or diplomatic caution, but with genuine curiosity. They wanted to understand. They wanted to learn. The U.S. Defiance, now more a symbol than a mere spacecraft, stood as a living testament to human potential. Its quantum neural networks continued to process, to explore, to understand. It was no longer just a vessel of exploration. It was a bridge between different forms of consciousness. "We are not conquerors," Miranda told the assembled representatives. "We are explorers of possibility." The galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had introduced a new model of engagement, one based on understanding, on transformation, on the profound potential of communication. A new cosmic order had begun.